it's difficult to overstate the legacy of Batman Beyond.
There's a real sense of family between the audience and these characters.
He was just a kid. Terry was a kid. I think for a whole new generation, it made people go, wait, I can be Batman.
With a type of sustained enthusiasm from fans it's enjoyed for the last 2 decades, a Batman of the future seems like an idea everybody can get behind. But the story of Batman in the Neo-Gotham of 2039? Nobody actually wanted to do it.
Bruce and Alan had always kind of tried to push it off. You know, there are no bad ideas, but the network always seems to pick one.
The network, in this case, was the WB, and they had one more idea. Make it a teenage Batman in the future.
You're just a guy.
So how did a network exec's unwanted idea turn into a beloved animated series with its own unique legacy? How did Batman Beyond's producers create something from such a specific ask that not only lived up to the established Batcanon, but also expanded and enriched it? This is the inside story about finding brilliance out of necessity, about a classic Batman that nobody wanted. From the best-selling, critically acclaimed comics to the live-action and animated television shows to the blockbuster movies. Okay, maybe not all the movies. The Caped Crusader has found its audience no matter the decade or the medium. If you'll excuse the obvious pun, Bruce Wayne has a pretty good batting average. By the late 1990s, Batman was king of the animated hill. On the heels of Batman the Animated Series, executive producers Bruce Timm and Paul Dini followed up the genre-defining hit with the new Batman Adventures, refining the distinctive animation style of Batman the Animated Series that became known as Dark Deco. This new series focused more on the Bat family than on Bruce Wayne and his lonely crusade. Airing on what was then known as the Kids WB, the New Adventures of Batman was a hit. Fans loved it, the ratings were strong, and the addition of an entire Bat family to model action figures from made the toy companies happy. But after barely a year on the air, New Adventures would have its plug pulled.
I'm not sure I can adequately describe it. It was surreal and disappointing and shocking, and so to have the rug pulled out from under us, it was just like, oh, crap, seriously?
Why was the decision made? Well, you can at least partially blame Dawson. At the time, the WB network was Teen Central. Thanks to shows like Dawson's Creek, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and Felicity, the network had a stranglehold on younger viewers. So they told the Batman production team they wanted a new Batman cartoon for the Kids WB with a teenaged Caped Crusader.
I don't know if this was like toy line related or what, but I think Buffy was doing really well for them, so I think they wanted a version of Batman similar to Buffy.
The producers all just knew that teenage Batman would be a nightmare, because it's well established in comics canon that teenage Bruce Wayne had not yet become the Dark Knight, and it didn't fit into the mythology of the animated universe they had spent the 90s building. And so, in a meeting with WB executives, Bruce Timm turned to an idea born of desperation.
So I said, so if there was some way that we could come up with a teenage Batman show that was still in continuity, that still built off of the shows that we'd already done, and the only way to really do that is to go forward into the future and introduce a new character from Batman.
If the idea was a desperate Hail Mary, fortunately, WB network executive Jamie Kellner was there to catch it.
Jamie's reaction was, it was kind of odd. I remember this specifically. He said, yeah, so it's like the new generation of samurai passing his sword on to his protege. And I thought, well, I don't really know what that's about, but yeah, like that. And he said, great, let's do that. But you got a green light. He said, I want this show for next fall. And we're just like, duh, what?
In Hollywood, getting a green light is usually cause for celebration, and there's no industry where being your own champion is more necessary. So the first hurdle to clear was tall and glaring. The producers weren't sold on their own pitch.
Like, oh, I don't want to do this stupid show. I don't want to do teenage Batman, blah, blah, blah. It's like, I want to keep doing the show we're doing, even though we knew that was pretty much a lost cause. And so we just kind of walked away grumbling, not really very enthusiastic about it.
And I remember Bruce coming back from the meeting and telling me about it. And I said, that sounds cool. We should do it. And I think Bruce said he wasn't sure about the idea until he pitched it to me.
He said, yeah, a futuristic show, teenage Batman, and we can kind of do all that Spider-Man stuff, the torture hero, he's got to balance his schoolwork and his love life and being a superhero. We can totally come up with our own stylish version of futuristic Gotham, and it's like, yeah, I think it would be fun. And I kind of like, well, yeah, you're kind of talking me into it.
Tim was slowly coming around to the idea of the new series, but an enormous problem still remained. Getting a show from pitch to production in a matter of months is unheard of in animated television. In short, it was time to start panicking. Part of Bruce Timm's initial hesitance with the request from the WB was the fear of losing an established and popular continuity. A brand new show and a brand new branch of the legacy was a perilous way to proceed, something that was not lost on every member of the crew, including voice director Andrea Romano.
We were creating a series that was not based on established material, whereas Batman was, Superman was, Teen Titans even was, based on existing material. This was something that we were kind of going to create ourselves.
So, in some respects, out of a desire to not be vilified by Bat fandom, the team had to be sure the series was tied to their canon, and one actor was able to do that by himself. Casting Kevin Conroy as Old Man Bruce was a no-brainer. Using the definitive voice of the Dark Knight confirmed Batman Beyond's place in the same continuity as Batman the Animated Series, but, like everybody else, Conroy took a little convincing.
They said, well, we want to do a new Batman show. And I thought, oh, great. This is great, another show. They said, but you're not going to be Batman. I said, wait a minute. That doesn't sound so good.
While Conroy rooted that series in their established canon, the network mandate for a fresh and futuristic take on the Dark Knight still needed addressing.
We were still using the same Bruce Wayne, just as a much older character, so there had to be some similarities and yet some differences.
There was a veritable stampede of young Hollywood stars looking to nab the role of Terry McGinnis, but it was Will Friedle, an actor from ABC's TGIF sitcom Boy Meets World, that quickly got everyone's attention.
To be honest with you, I think the thing that I did other people might not have done, which might have been one of the things that gave me a little bit of a leg up on getting the role, which was I loved the Michael Keaton Batmans. You know, this was obviously pre-Christian Bale. So in the Michael Keaton Batmans, I thought he really paid respect to the fact that Batman and Bruce Wayne were two very different characters. Distinctly remember doing half of the audition as Terry and then half deepening the voice and doing it as Batman. To
Conroy, Bruce's decision to permanently turn the suit over to someone else and accept that his hero days are over is one of the triumphs of Batman Beyond, and an aspect of Bruce Wayne that has rarely been portrayed in the mythos.
That shows extraordinary growth on Bruce Wayne's part. Oddly, it becomes the most fulfilling relationship he's ever had, is the one he has with Terry McGinnis. It's like a son. It's that fulfillment that a parent has with a child.
But even with Conroy sold and the all-important futuristic teenage Batman cast, Bruce Timm faced yet another issue. The writers were still struggling to wrap their heads around the initial pitch. Writers had trouble scripting a Batman show where Bruce Wayne wasn't Batman.
Literally, most of the shows, literally all their pitches were about Bruce Wayne. And it was just like, you know what? I love old man Bruce Wayne. I think he's fascinating and fun because he's ancient and he's cranky and he's more of a bastard than he ever was, but he's not the star of our show.
The bedrock of the show was Terry McGinnis, and so it wasn't Bruce Wayne. When you look at it, the heart of that show is Terry McGinnis. Bruce Wayne is kind of along for the ride.
All of our freelance writers, nobody understood it. Nobody could get it. So we literally had to break like all of the stories in-house.
Ultimately, they did get help from writer Stan Berkowitz, a member of the DC animated family that had moved to live-action drama after his Emmy-winning time on Superman. He returned to script the back half of the two-part series premiere of Batman Beyond, titled Rebirth, which aired in primetime on January 10, 1999, and he made it clear he had no intention of writing Terry as just another young Bruce Wayne.
It would be impossible for me to imagine a character, a teenager that dark, that damaged. The whole point of doing the series was to do one, have a hero who is younger and could appeal to younger people. Well, you make him someone who thinks he knows a lot, and he's got the raw material. No, you didn't know that much, and you made a mistake here, you made a mistake there, but you're learning.
While the writing team sorted out the foundation of the show, the production and design team was dealing with problems of their own. All they had to do was create a whole new world, complete with a brand new group of villains for a show they had to start making right now. As the sprint to deliver the hastily pitched and approved show on an unheard-of schedule began, there was still work left to be done on the new Batman Adventures and Superman the Animated Series.
It's kind of all a blur to me, because at one point we were finishing Superman, finishing Batman, and doing Batman Beyond at the same time.
We were like on a machine with that other show, and they basically said, we have to produce a whole new show, and also it's set in the future, so none of the stock designs that we use on Superman and Batman will apply.
We just had to generate a lot of artwork really, really quickly. We would kind of go into a meeting and we would like sort of throw out a bunch of drawings, and then we would start shaping what the show was.
As the two main characters, Terry and Bruce were the backbone of the show, but a Batman is only as good as his rogues gallery. Batman Beyond needed bad guys. Time was short, and Tim was adamant about not simply recycling the classic villains. Once again, what seemed like a problem turned out to be a huge opportunity for the show's staff, who soon set out to create an entirely new roster of baddies.
And Bruce pulled all the artists who could do it into a room and said, we need villains. He basically just threw it out there. Basically developed the show in a room, and we were just throwing out ideas out there and literally just drawing.
That frenzied method, sketch first, concept later, led to the creation of memorable foes like Ink and Shriek.
At least in one case that I know, that the noise guy Shriek. Basically, Glenn drew the picture, and then I was just handed the picture and Alan said, "Here, Glenn just did this. It has something to do with sound. Figure out something."
I wanted this show to be Terry's show. I didn't want Terry necessarily to be fighting all of Bruce's villains. I didn't think that was interesting.
More than just updating the villains for the show's new Dark Knight, Batman Beyond modernized the Batman mythos thematically as well, exploring the dark side of technology and science's impact on society. And there's no better place to showcase a sweeping stylistic shift than a show's title sequence, and Batman Beyond's was a stunner. Putting the series' cyberpunk influences front and center, the titles are a breathtaking montage of multimedia images designed by the late great cartoonist Darwyn Cooke.
Darwyn assembled it all in After Effects back in the days when it took forever just to render a single scene. It's just like kind of mind-blowing when I look back on it now. It's like it's a pretty sophisticated piece of film for 1999 technology. There's a James Tucker shot. I designed a bunch of stuff. So it was definitely a collaboration.
That shot of Batman standing and he turns with the Jokers, that's an action figure that Bruce like kit bashed into Batman Beyond. It's on like a little Lazy Susan kind of thing. Bruce kind of moved the camera and rotated it, and it's just two pieces of artwork that are doing this as the Batman is rotating in the center. That's all it is.
That shot of Bruce Wayne that everybody thinks is CG, that's literally a sculpture. That's a 3D sculpture. I stuck that literally on a Lazy Susan on my kitchen table and spun it around and shot it with my home video camera. Darwyn took that image and digitized it, and it gives it that weird kind of CG kind of look.
In a lot of ways, it's really low tech, but I think everyone thinks it's really high tech.
The show was coming together, mixing the demands of the network with solutions that made the concept more and more intriguing to the creative team. The idea that nobody wanted to make was sounding better all the time. To them. But what about the fans?
From the minute we announced the show was going to happen, all of our fans were just like, they already wrote it off. They were just like, oh my God, this sounds horrible. This is going to be terrible. A teenage Batman. It's going to be for kids.
If keeping the continuity from their previous shows was important, keeping the audience from those shows was crucial. They had a lot to prove right out of the gate, and to do that, they had to start with a bang. The series premiere features an aging Batman in the year 2019. While trying to stop a kidnapping, Bruce grabs a gun as a last resort. The act of desperation convinces him to retire the Dark Knight.
Never again.
The first two-parter, everything about that show is so much more adult and darker and uglier than pretty much anything we had done in any of our shows up until that point. So it was kind of like, we knew that when we had that shot of Batman, retiree age Batman pointing a gun at a criminal, we knew that was like the best way to slap those guys upside the head and say, nope, this is a good show and you're going to love it.
The story jumps ahead 20 years from there, and Neo Gotham has risen. Terry McGinnis is attacked by the Joker's street gang, only to be saved by an elderly Bruce Wayne. Terry soon discovers the old man used to be Batman, and after Terry's father is killed by the Jokers as retaliation, Bruce offers to train him to become the new Batman Gotham needs. As the show premiered, even with the banger of an opening, the response wasn't exactly positive at first.
It wasn't overnight by any means, and it was all hate at first. By the end of our first season, people were begrudgingly going, oh, okay.
And yet, by August of 2000, Warner Brothers Pictures had hired Remember the Titans director Boaz Yakin to make a live-action adaptation of Beyond. Batman Beyond co-creators Paul Dini and Alan Burnett were even hired to co-write the film. And while the project ultimately stalled, it's clear that studio execs saw the appeal the character had to fans. After 3 seasons and 1 feature film, the series came to an end in December of 2001. Nearly 4 years later, what was essentially the series finale of Batman Beyond aired on Justice League Unlimited. The episode Epilogue retconned, using some serious superhero science, that Bruce Wayne was actually Terry McGinnis' father. However, beyond that, there has been no real movement on a possible Batman Beyond revival, but fans keep asking anyway.
I get that a lot from people these days, like, oh, when are you guys going to bring back BTAS? Or when are you going to do more Batman Beyond? It's just kind of like, well, it's always tempting to go back to those worlds. But at the same time, it's also kind of like, oh, man, you don't want to go back and screw the pooch. You don't want to, disappoint people with, they have so many high expectations for those shows. At the same time, if I got a really good opportunity to do something more in those worlds, I probably would not be able to resist the temptation to do it.
Despite its unlikely origin as a project nobody wanted, today Batman Beyond is a beloved part of the DC animated universe. And that means something different for everyone involved in the creation of the show. But one thing seems to be true for all of them. It validated their commitment to taking a big risk.
At first, it was something we were dreading, and then it became something we really got into and loved. And we thought of it as something where we were actually contributing to the Batman mythos, something unique, something that didn't exist before.
The network wanted a new Batman, a teenage Batman, like Buffy, only from the future. Bruce Timm and his team didn't even want to make the show at first. It was an idea beyond saving, they thought. But the more they worked on it, the more they came to love the concept, as did the fans. A teenage future Batman with an old Bruce Wayne as his mentor? Hell yeah. In the years since the show went off the air, Terry McGinnis has persisted in comics, games, and of course on DVD, Blu-ray, and streaming. And with the constantly changing state of the DC film universe, the future of Batman Beyond is always filled with hope.
This is unbearably cool.